Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Laura Parings. I'm the Director of Programs and Education here at Rare Book School, also known as RBS.
And I'm Andrew Rivard Hill, the admissions officer, and we're so glad to be here to tell you about the MC Lang Fellowship in Book History, Bibliography, and Humanities Teaching with historical sources, and then to discuss the application process for the 2025 cohort of fellows.
Okay, so we're going to begin with an overview of the fellowship program, and then we're going to turn to a Q&A at the end. Please feel free to add questions to the chat function here as we go along. We'll also make sure that we answer the questions that were submitted through the registration forms. And when we get to the end for the Q&A, if you want to unmute, use the raise hand, and you are welcome to ask us your questions face to face, as it were, here on the recording. So let's start with a little bit of background information about the fellowship program. The fellowship is endowed by the generous funds provided by Mr. Michael C. Lang, who, as an undergraduate, was introduced to rare books and special collections in a way that has impacted his own interests in life. He's now a collector and a bibliophile, and he has funded this fellowship program in order to help provide instructors in today's colleges, small liberal arts schools, and small universities to help create that same sense of wonder and inspire awe and curiosity amongst today's undergraduate students. In Mr. Lang's own words, the fellows can take their newly acquired teaching tactics, techniques, and strategies back to their institutions and undermine a serious side effect experienced by many of the undergraduate screen addicted: a misplaced belief that physical books and other material sources are nothing but cumbersome, transparent, and outdated containers of the texts they convey. So he wants to make sure that the fellows will individually and collectively reinforce the useful value of primary materials in academic study. Further, he hopes that the fellows will, through their passion and enthusiasm, instill in at least some of their students a sensitivity to the pleasure of associating with physical books, a pleasure which may very well enhance the lives of those students long after they have left the academic world. So even if those students don't go on to become humanities scholars and or library and archival professionals, he hopes that they will then find pleasure and significance in primary materials. So the goal of the fellowship is to reanimate humanities teaching by equipping educators, and that's including professors, librarians, archivists, and other staff at these universities who might be working in fields like digital humanities, for instance, with the skills to enlarge their students' historical sensibilities through bibliographically informed instruction with original historical sources. In particular, we're looking at the humanities teaching in liberal arts colleges, the small universities. We'll talk a bit more about kind of the definition of the size of those universities soon. The idea here is to inspire wonder among the students. To do that, the fellows are given the tools and tips of the trade to build a bookish community at their institutions by collaborating with their colleagues, building foundational structures at the schools, and working with their students.
And so, what does the fellowship include, you might ask? Well, the fellowship includes tuition waivers for two rare book school courses, one course in each of this 2-year program. And the fellowship also includes an annual stipend of $1,500 for travel, housing, food, course books, and other expenses incurred by the fellows related to the course. Additionally, there are matching funds of up to $1,000 available in each year of the fellowship program. And each year after taking that year's course, the fellows may request $1,000 from the Lang Fellowship Fund that will be matched by funds from the fellow's home institution. These funds will be used to build the book historical community at the home institution. And these funds can be used to purchase materials for a teaching collection, for example, exhibition vitrines, running a speaker series, a symposium. These are some examples from past fellows. Whatever it is that is going to best serve the community at your home institution. And we encourage that projects be undertook with other Lang Fellows as well.
If the
Whether
opportunity arises, yeah.
Yeah, if the opportunity arises, whether those other fellows are in your cohort or the year before, or the year after, whether they're at your school or if they are at a nearby school. If you would like to work together on your project, we definitely encourage you to do that.
The key component of the Lang Fellowship is to build community, but it's not just about the community at the individual institutions and among undergraduates. It's also about building the community amongst the cohort of fellows. And so this is why the first class that the fellows need to take, H165, which you'll hear more about in a moment, is a requirement, and everyone in that cohort needs to take it in the same summer so that they have an opportunity to get to know each other, learn from each other, support each other as they go through the rest of the fellowship program and even beyond the end of the fellowship program. And so now Andrew is going to talk a bit about those course requirements.
Absolutely. So the first course must be the course H165 entitled Book History, Bibliography, and Humanities Teaching. It's taught by the Rare Book School's own executive director, Michael Suarez, um, and it'll be offered in June of 2025. Um,
We think we're still working on the schedule. I'm just going to be fully
okay,
disclose the truth here. We think it's going to be in June, but we should know soon for sure.
the exact dates, yes, and that's important because as a fellow, one of the requirements is that the students, the fellows, take the course in person in Charlottesville here during a specified week. The courses at Rare Book School are 5-day intensive courses, so they take up, one week of time. That's the amount of time that's required for a Rare Book School course, typically, unless it's an online class. And lucky for you as fellows, you would be guaranteed admission to this class, the first class, H165. So you have you get to take that class, and there are no other applicants. So that would be the first class you take. And then the second course is an elective in your second year. And the only class that you can't take is H90, Teaching the History of the Book, because it's basically a repeat of very similar content to H165, which as a fellow you will have taken in a previous year. So on the other hand, you have a wide variety of classes that you can choose from, and available on our website to look at and to kind of customize to what your interests, your research interests, where they are. Um, so that is the course requirements. There are two of them. And next, Laura will be talking a bit about one of the intended effects um, that's part of this fellowship.
Yeah, so we think of it as the multiplier effect. So it's important to be aware of this emphasis on we're thinking about building community, and thus we're thinking about sharing what is learned in the classroom with the students, with colleagues at the home institution. And this is something that is important for mentioning in the application materials because the selection committee will be looking for this information. You don't have to have an exact plan if I'm definitely going to be working with colleague X and Y, and I'm going to be working on this particular project. It may very well change after you've taken a course or even the second course. And so it's you're not going to be obligated to stick to the plan that you pitch in the application, but it is important to give a sense that you've been thinking about how to build that foundational structure with the funds and the training that you'll be provided with as part of this fellowship program. And so It is something that I would make sure that you mention in your application materials as you work on this process. And so, oops, too far. There we go. So thinking about eligibility as you're approaching your application materials. This information is found on our website. You've maybe already seen this, but just to kind of run through it quickly with you, because we do tend to get a lot of questions about this, and that's entirely fair. So we want to make sure that you feel confident in your eligibility as you prepare your materials. So the fellowship is open to full-time tenured faculty or full-time tenured track faculty who have passed their third year review or its equivalent or to full-time library or curatorial staff members, other staff members at liberal arts colleges and small universities, also with that sort of third year equivalent review moment. Not we found that people who are very new to an institution don't necessarily have the same tools at their disposal. They don't necessarily know the network yet. And so it's best if we are working with the fellows who have already kind of been there for a couple of years at least to get their footing at the institution to really build up a network of colleagues, and then they're able to make better use of the funds, of the training, and get better traction with their projects. So in terms of that small liberal arts school, small university label, we're thinking fewer than 5,000 students, and particularly undergraduates with that number. And we that school needs to be located in the United States, and that university or college cannot award earned doctorates in humanities fields. If it's a school that has medical field degrees or law degrees, business degrees, education degrees, that's fine, just not a doctorate in the humanities fields, because then the dynamic of the work changes enough at those universities that it's not really fitting within the aim of this fellowship program. So about 5,000, we have found that community college setups, because there are so many two-year programs or two-year degree programs, or because there are so many students who are less likely to be around on campus as much, that it's not quite as good a fit with the program. But just jumping ahead to thinking about one of the questions that came through from the registration form, if you are in that situation where you're kind of not sure if you're at a college like a community college and you want some more information about eligibility, please do contact us at rbs_lang@virginia.edu. But it may be that the best option would be to apply for one of our general scholarships. The deadline for that is coming up on November 1st. And I would encourage you to take that H90 Teaching the History of the Book course instead of doing the Lang Fellowship if you are not eligible. So the other requirements for eligibility are anyone who's already taken that H90 Teaching the History of the Book course is not eligible, again, because they've already taken a version of that H60 165 class. And alas, past and present members of RBS's full-time year-round staff aren't eligible, so Andrew and I will never be able to apply for this fellowship program. All right. If you have questions about this, drop them in the chat and we'll get back to the details of this later on. But first,
Absolutely, yes.
yep,
Yeah, yeah.
Andrew.
Yes. So you're probably wondering, how do I apply for the Lang Fellowship? Well, I'm glad you asked. I can walk you through how to apply. So there's a few steps. So you'll see on the presentation slide here, the first step is go to rarebookschool.org. You'll notice the page that's actually on the screen is the description and the more detailed information about the Lang Fellowship. So if you need to consult that after this information session, feel free to do so. But quite simply, to begin to apply, first you will click on My RBS, which is circled in red there with a nice little arrow pointing to it. And that will take you to here, and you would log in with your My RBS account information if you have it. If you do not have it, then you would need to click on the Need an Account below the RBS colored, maroon colored rectangular box there, Need an Account. And if ever you need help resetting a password or getting back into your My RBS, feel free to reach out to us at Rare Book School, and we'll help you with figuring that out. So, um, and then after you log in, so now here you see the My RBS student landing page after you log in. And so you'll see these beautiful some illustrations and some archival material. And so scholarship and fellowship applications, you'll need to scroll down. So on the next slide, after you scroll down, you will see this grouping of scholarships that we have available here at Rare Book School. And so the MC Lang Fellowship is on the bottom there. So about in the middle there, it says click here. You would just click on there. It's the presentation slide, so we can't actually click, but okay, here we are. The next one will take you to the Lang Fellowship landing page. This may look familiar to those of you who have used Interfolio, because on the next one you click on Apply Now, and there's a description here of the Lang Fellowship again, the same as on the previous two slides ago. So here you would click on Apply Now. I know you're clicking on a lot of apply nows, but it's it's relatively straightforward. And then if you have an account with Interfolio, that's the service that we use to gather the information from applicants. So if you have an Interfolio account, that's great, and you probably know how to use that very well. But if you don't have an account, then you would need to create one. The key thing to remember is please don't pay for it. If they're asking you to pay, then you're probably not on the Interfolio website. I know from my own experience with Interfolio applying for jobs on the job market that I've never had to pay. So please don't do that. So you go to the Interfolio login page, and I'll reiterate too, if you ever have any any trouble, technical issues, just let us know and we can help you out. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you along the way, guide you so that applying is straightforward. So. And then on this next page, just I know it's a little bit small and you can't read it. I can't read it anyway, even on this big screen I'm looking at. But the bottom one, I wanted to call our attention to the bottom one, which is the letter of recommendation. So just to just to say that the way that it works with the recommendation letter is that you would click on the add file there. Next to it, and you would add the file. And when you're adding the file, for those of you who haven't used Interfolio, those of you who have used it understand probably what's the next step is that you add it, and then what you can do is you can alert your recommender about the due date, what it is you're applying for, and then materials if you'd like to share that information with your recommender. So basically what I'm saying is the recommendation letter is included within the Interfolio. So you may want to reach out to your recommender to let them know that they will receive this, but all of it's done inside of Interfolio for those of you who haven't used it. So
Yeah, so it's not so much that you're adding the file yourself, you're using that add file function, but the system will send an email to ask your recommender to upload a file if you don't have it already in the system. But just for being a confidential letter, it'll contact them. They don't have to create an Interfolio account. they just should just be able to use the link to upload their letter when it's ready. And that link is provided by Interfolio automatically. Okay. So in addition to the letter, the other materials that are required, for the, there we go, for the application are a curriculum vitae and 4 short essays. These come after you will be prompted to fill out 2 very brief forms. One of them is a contact information form, just to make sure that we can reach you. And the second one is an eligibility form where there's a series of yes, no sort of questions just to confirm that you are in fact eligible for the award. And so those 4 essays, we have the questions listed here on the slide. They're also readily there in Interfolio when you get there, and they're on the website on that Lang informational page of the website that we saw a brief slide of earlier. So you may feel as you are writing your essays that there's a bit of overlap. You find yourself kind of thinking of everything being very interconnected, and that's great, and as it should be. But I will say that we have designed these questions to try to draw out different aspects of how you're thinking about this fellowship and your teaching opportunities with the undergraduates. So do think about the ways that you can answer each of these particular questions to create the whole narrative of your interest. We do ask that these be submitted as 4 separate documents so that the system is really clear that you have submitted everything, rather than putting all 4 of your 1-page single-space essays into one document and uploading it. Just keep them as 4 separate files, please.
So a little bit more on the letter of recommendation, just to um, help each of you think through who might be the best person to recommend you to give you the best chance of becoming a fellow. So the letter should be written by a colleague who can speak to your suitability for the Lang Fellowship, to your teaching, especially outreach, impact potential, dedication to teaching with primary sources, bibliography, book history, and inculcating wonder. Some advice that we have next to this beautiful image of some paper making from this past summer, one of the course offerings here at Rare Book School, is which recommender can give the most recent, salient, and specific examples of your teaching with undergraduates, all of that underlined, as well as your real and potential contributions to the hands-on study of the book. So that was a question just to kind of guide each of you through thinking if maybe you have a couple of people or 2 or 3 people that come to mind and you're trying to figure out, sift through, okay, who's the one that's going to help me become a fellow, then this is one question that I hope can help.
And so we occasionally have the situation where the recommender maybe has some trouble with Interfolio, or there's a slight delay with that letter arriving. We can accept a letter uh, slightly after the due date of December 9th, I believe. And so we want to just make sure that you're in touch with us. We'll also be in touch as we get closer to the deadline and we see in Interfolio that the letter is still missing. We will reach out to make sure that you're aware that the letter hasn't arrived yet so that you can contact your recommender. And if that needs to be sent to us directly as a PDF, please send that to that rbs_lang@virginia.edu that Andrew posted into the chat earlier.
Yes, and I just want to underline, highlight that the due date is December 9th, so there is some time. Just to be clear, if you're going to go away with 1 or 2 things, okay, MC Lang is due December 9th of this year. So there's some time, so that's always good. It goes quickly this time of the year, I know. But just to make sure, December 9th, December 9th, December 9th, that's when it's due. So but of course, like Laura was saying, with the letters of recommendation, we can be flexible. We understand in the busyness of it all that we can receive some of the letters of recommendation a little late, but not too late.
Not too late. All right. So, in thinking through advice to give about your application materials, one of the things that has come up a couple of times over the years is encapsulated here. The selection committee is looking more for how you will use what you learn with the undergraduates than they are in how you might use it to pursue your own research and publications. It is great that it will help with your own research and publications. We love hearing about that. But for the selection committee purposes, the emphasis should really be more on that building of community and helping to create a bookish community at your institution, how you're going to share things with the undergraduates. Um, yeah, and so I think we'll see if you have other particular questions as we get into our Q&A shortly. But that's a big piece that sometimes gets a little bit overlooked in the application materials, which is understandable because a lot of people working at the university, it's a lot about publication output. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So, you may wonder about the experience of being a Lang Fellow. We've included a quote here at the top just to give an idea, a brief idea of, what it's like to be a Lang Fellow. So the course H165, which is the one that I referred to before, that Michael Suarez teaches, demonstrated through the exercises and object lessons how creatively as well as deliberately one can teach. While I was hopeful that the class would be terrific, I had not anticipated how eye-opening it would be, a regenerative experience that will have ramifications well beyond my teaching in book history. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps to describe what the experience of being a Lang Fellow is briefly. Another question that comes up often is about like what kinds of projects might I propose? I'm not really sure. Maybe you have some ideas. You're not limited in any way to these five. This is just to kind of get the juices flowing, as it were. But so some recent projects by Lang Fellows include a book historical, panel discussion is one, faculty learning community such as leading a workshop or reading groups. There was one, a transcribathon and speaker series, and then speaker workshop series. That's been very popular for Lang Fellows in the past. And then finally, the acquisition of materials for teaching collections. So that's just to give an idea of what some fellows have done in the past. Like I said, you're not limited to these, but it's perfectly fine if this is what, sprouts from all of your labors as a Lang Fellow. Um, and I think the next slide is, yeah, if you have any questions, just to direct it again, I put that in the chat, the RBS underscore Lang at virginia.edu. So if you have any questions after this info session, just send us an email and we're happy to answer your questions to help guide you through the process of applying to this fellowship at Rare Book School.
Okay, and so now we're ready to answer your questions. Please feel free to raise your hand or pop it into the chat. And we can also start with some questions that came in with the registration forms. So we'll kick off with one. One that we've kind of touched on already. Somebody had asked specifically about the recommender for their letter, and we're asking if it was okay to go for a colleague who was in a different department rather than their supervisor. And the answer is yes. As Andrew delineated earlier, we want to make sure that this is somebody who can speak well to uh, your ability to teach with the undergraduates, your ability to get those hands-on experiences into the classroom. etc. So it does not need to be your direct supervisor. It just needs to be somebody who can really be a cheerleader for you and speak directly to your potential.
See a question.
Aha. The 5,000 undergrad enrollment, a hard limit or ballpark? Yeah, that's 6,400. There's quite a few that have come up lately that are like right in that ballpark. Um, 6,000 is kind of it's pushing it from what we've done before. Feel free to tell me a little bit more in an email maybe or now if you want to about that and if it's kind of maybe a division of the undergraduates like humanities versus non-humanities, if that's something you know that might help to kind of clarify. It's pushing the limit there.
So it looks like Christy, do you have a question for us?
I do. Thank you. And thanks for hosting this. This is really helpful. So my question is about the community that you can create and like who can be included in that community. The reason I ask is because we're a very small campus. And
Mm.
so for the history department, we have a really close partnership with our local public library
Mm.
and also a local bookstore. So my question is, would those people also count as like a community building? Would that be useful to include? Um,
It, by all means, do include that. The emphasis is more on that undergraduate impact at the individual institution, but it is great to know that there is an opportunity for spreading that into the larger community as well, because that's so important, especially for some of these smaller colleges where that's part of the mission in many cases. So, does that help answer?
it does, yeah, because I mean, it. I can talk about we're a teaching institution, so I can talk about undergrads and experiential learning and all those kinds of things, which is great. But if talking, but we would also want to put this into the community. Um, yeah, so that was very helpful. Thank you.
Great. Macronin.
Yeah, I have a new laptop, so
Gotcha.
I didn't put my name. My name is not on it yet. I'm Meg. My question is kind of just a nitty-gritty logistical question. So the deadline is December 9th,
It is.
which Andrew has assured us.
Yeah.
Uh, and so when is the notification? And I'm asking because you said my real question is you said something about the course. The required course is June of 2025. And of course, some of us sort of already have work obligations or workshops we're supposed to run or things we're supposed to do at that time, so might not even know if we're available for the class. So when's the notification is one, and the follow-up is just, I guess, if you already know that you can't do the class, you would just apply for the next year. Just
Yeah.
wait the cycle. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we should have the date set and announced for that class before December 9th. So you will know before you submit the application if that you might need to, pencil in something for that week. And then the notification will come out in January. The selection committee will meet in early January. The applications for our classes also open in January with a first round deadline in February. So we encourage you to get your application in by that first round, in part because we know that if you've been awarded, you know which class you're going to be taking. So you should have that nicely squared away if you can, right there in that January transition into February. So if there does turn out to be a conflict, then unfortunately we would need you to defer at that point for the next round.
Sure, sure. And can I quickly ask if the essays, I haven't opened the application or created an account, are the essays, I assume they're limited in length?
Yeah, so one page, it is okay if you go spill, I think it says like no more than one page. It's okay if you spill over a little bit, but one page single spaced is the limit for each.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to turn back to questions here from the forum. We've already answered the eligibility size requirement. So we also heard one about somebody who works at a career-focused school with programs in business and health sciences exclusively. Their humanities teaching is geared toward general education and demonstrating the relevance of the humanities to career-focused students. I realize that this is a bit niche, this person says, but they wonder if this type of school would be a possible fit for the fellowship. So for the person who asked this, I would encourage you to reach out to us, and if we can figure out who it was on that registration form, we may reach out to you by email, unless you're here and can provide a little more information. It is not disqualifying, but we would want to talk a bit more about maybe the nature of the school. Basically, you are eligible, feel free to apply, but we'd like to hear a bit more about the humanities program. Make sure that you're addressing that very clearly in your application materials as you move forward. And if you have additional questions, please do write to rbs_lang@virginia.edu. Okay, we've answered that one, and
I had one more
yeah.
question. Well, one
Go ahead,
question.
Andrew.
Question 5. Yeah. So the question was, I have questions about the availability of online options and or winter and summer options, since I will still need to teach my in-person courses at my own college at the time of the fellowship. So this is similar to what Meg, you were asking. So for the H-165 class, that's in person. The fellow's required to do that. For this year, for the course in your second year, you can do online classes. We encourage you to to come back the next summer if you can do an in-person one, but you also can combine online classes for the credit hours for the course. To answer that question. But the H-165, to reiterate, that one fellows need to be here in Charlottesville just to benefit from being part of the community here, and to benefit from the other fellows, meeting them and talking with them and having conversations with them. So yeah.
Yeah, and so those online classes we have some that are offered in the summer. We are currently sticking with the format where any of our summer classes are basically 5 consecutive days. If it's a 6-hour online class, you wouldn't be meeting every day of those 5 days, but all of those sessions would be within 1 week. For our off-season classes, as we think of them for fall and winter, those we are, as you might have seen this fall, we're moving more towards the meetings where it takes several weeks and it's multiple meetings, 1 or 2 or 3 in an evening through those weeks, to help make it a little bit more accessible for people who are working through the fall and winter semester terms. So that's what's available. We do encourage you to make sure that you're thinking through how to get the most out of those course waivers, so that if there's maybe a 12-hour online class that is the thing that is the most relevant for you, be in touch with us about what other 12-hour options there are, because we're thinking about this in terms of the equivalent of one full-length class. So the in-person classes are, with one exception, they're about 30 contact hours during the week. For the online, we consider a 22-hour class to be the full-length online version. And so then we also have 12-hour and 6-hour offerings. So we would not want to see you taking like a 12 and then not being able to use the other half of that waiver essentially for something that would be relevant for you. So we just encourage you to be thoughtful about that, and to be in touch with us about what options are available. Okay. I also had a question about whether there are opportunities to visit other collections here in the United States or possibly in England, in the sense that when you take a class, you can visit maybe take a class at one of our partner institutions. So maybe going to the Kislak Center at Penn and using those collections. But I'm not sure if this question was thinking more about funding a research trip, which is not the intended use of those matching funds or necessarily for the stipend money for the year. But there are great opportunities to get out there in some of these other classes where we're working with wonderful partner institutions, and they're very generous in providing access to scores of their materials within a particular class. Okay.
There was another question too I saw about like for the second year, the course in the second year. Basically, the question is there a summer option for the second year? And absolutely, the answer to the question is absolutely yes. So we run our courses um, in the summer, primarily at Rare Book School. So absolutely, there's usually around 40 classes to choose from. Some are here in Charlottesville, some are online, some are at our partner institutions, like Laura was just mentioning, Philadelphia, Princeton. You can take a look at our website just to kind of see what classes align with your specific research interests and then where those classes end up being. But absolutely, there is a summer option for the second year. And then the follow-up was how many weeks is the first year summer course? It's actually not weeks. It's 1 week long. It's 5 days. It's intensive. So you will want to make sure that you can carve out a chunk of time where you don't have responsibilities outside of, because you will have to travel here and get set up here in the dormitories or at a hotel. So it's good to have the space in both physical and mental to be able to do the intensive 5 day week-long course. But it's 1 week, it's not weeks long, to answer that question. And thank you for that question as well.
We have had more in this sort of transition back from the pandemic
Hmm.
closures and everything. We did have a question at one point in a past year about whether basically the attendance policy for the classes at Rare Book School. And we do expect that everyone will be present for every session of the class, and those in-person ones, generally speaking, run from 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. For the in-person, there's also an optional but encouraged Sunday gathering to kick things off in the afternoon and evening, late afternoon, evening. And that stands true for the online classes as well. It does create problems if somebody needs to like tries to duck away to take a call, a meeting for their job um, during that class session. So just be aware that if there are obligations that interfere with that, particularly if we're thinking about H-165 and there's kind of no other option in that first year, that needs to be something that you're thinking through very carefully because you are expected to be present for that whole course.
And that ties in nicely with this last question, which was, are there multiple sessions of the H-165 class each year? And the answer is no. But there is one. I mean, it happens every year, but it just reiterates what Laura's saying, um, that RBS requires that the Lang Fellows be here to again, just as I said before, to benefit from the community aspect, growing your community.
There was also a good question about how much experience with teaching the history of rare books or history of books is disqualifying. And it's an interesting question, and it comes up occasionally within the selection committee. I've been very honored to be part of that selection committee for a few years. And there is this sort of the balance of, does this person need to be taking this class? Generally speaking, we fall on there's always something to learn attitude to this. So and I think we probably have also, maybe somebody out there is thinking, maybe I don't know enough about teaching with historical materials or about book history. That one, we occasionally do come across a sort of, maybe that person needs to take one of like the H10, the history of the book 200 to 2000 survey, or one of our other sort of historical survey courses to get them, just because it can be clear from the essays that maybe they aren't as well grounded. And so there's a lot of, I think I could do this sort of thing and maybe over here. And so if they have a class ahead of time and then reapply, they will have uh, a better formed sense of what they would want to do with the fellowship. And so I would say just make your case for why you think that you would be able to use the opportunity of this fellowship to better your school and your own teaching or your own work in the libraries, etc. So it's not, there isn't a hard and fast rule on this. It just, we take everything on an individual basis with the selection committee to make sure that we're finding uh, a good cohort who can really take it and run with it. Are there any questions about, oh, we've got Christy, got another question. Great.
All right, I just have another question. How big is a cohort? I've been looking on the website and I don't see anything about size. Like what are our chances? And how large is the cohort also?
That's a good question.
Do you want to answer that, Andrew?
Well, in my role I'm the administrator now, and there are 10, I believe.
There are.
10, yes. Okay.
Bingo.
I get to
Yeah.
keep my administrator role. Hooray. No, so yeah, there are 10, to answer your question, Christy. Yeah, there are 10 fellows each year. So say a person doesn't get it one year, then feel free to apply the next year, right? So that's always a possibility. I sincerely hope that everyone can, get it, but then the reality is, it's a scholarship every year. So don't forget that fact either. And then the chances, I'll let Laura talk about that a little more because she has more extensive knowledge about that. So
Yeah, so it depends a bit on the year, the number of applications
Mm-mm.
that we get, but it is a rigorous screening process, vetting process, consideration process, whatever we want to call it. So it is, we always have a really solid pool of people to be choosing from, and it's always a bit of a tough choice. So put your best foot forward, but it's not an impossible shot. And we certainly have had people, as Andrew said, who maybe just didn't quite make it the first year they applied, but then on a second round, they were one of the selected fellows. So enthusiasm is always appreciated. And yeah, it's don't be daunted by the thought that it might be a sort of a situation where kind of like, well, there's 1,000 people applying. There are not 1,000 people applying,
Yeah.
and not even 100 people applying. So yeah, there's a good chance, but it is a rigorous process. Does anybody have any questions just about Rare Book School in general or the experience of attending one of the classes?
I do, but I don't want to like hog the spotlight.
Go for it.
Okay. So I'm really interested in like experiential learning and in like the book binding aspect and like the making aspect. Is that covered in the first class? And are those kinds of classes offered regularly? Because that's really the direction that I'm going with the reason I'm applying.
So there will be some exercises in that first class that are kind of like how to engage people with the materials kind of exercises. There is not, for instance, a bookbinding demonstration in that particular class, but a lot of our classes do include at least a demonstration of it. We try to give everybody a hands-on experience where we can. So it's very likely, and these run regularly. So things like the Introduction to the History of Bookbinding class B10 is a wonderful class, and Karin Limperhertz, who's now teaching that class for the last several years, has been incorporating more hands-on experience. So leather tooling, getting to use gold foil or leaf, depending on which year it is. Well, it's so much easier. So,
Yeah.
so getting a chance to really experience that. There's a lot of printing press demonstrations in our classes. pamphlet sewing in some of them, illustration processes. There's an opportunity to do dry point and lino cut blocks. So we do want people to have that opportunity if that's what they're looking for their own course. And it can certainly be a great experience for somebody doing the Lang Fellowship so that they can go and do something similar at their own institution. So yes, they are offered regularly. There's usually a pretty good indication. I say usually, like, I very much hope that there's a good indication on all of those course descriptions. But of course, now that I'm thinking about it, we should have like, this one's very hands-on. But certainly ask us if you have questions about that, because some of them take more time for that than others, like the duplicating, the 20th century duplicating processes class, G80, I think it is, by Brian Cassidy. There's a number of very cool exercises to, mimeograph and spirit duplication and stuff. So, so it's cool to get to see how it actually works and actually do it yourself.
Yeah, and then the paper making, like we
Oh
saw in
yeah.
the slideshow, there was the paper making exercise. There's paper making in one of the classes, G75, the paper as bibliographical evidence. Yeah, so
Yep.
yeah. So that to speak to the making aspect, Christy, that you mentioned. Yeah.
And this is true too in several of our classes running at remote partner institutions, where they also incorporate the history of the artist books class in New York City. Will go and do print a zine on a risograph machine, um, and things like that. And there are opportunities for common press demonstrations and Washington presses and all sorts of cool stuff. Right. Gonna pause for a little bit, just another minute, see if
Yeah.
anybody comes up with anything else. But as Andrew said earlier, please do feel free to reach out if you have additional questions once we end here. We'll share the video with you and with the others who registered who couldn't attend. And we will certainly look forward to seeing applications from you by December 9th. And we'll let you know in mid-January what the decision is.
One last note too, just there are other scholarships available at Rare Book School, just to do a little mini plug for that as well. Hopefully you all want to apply for the Lang Fellowship, but if you're thinking of something different or for whatever reason, circumstances or situation, there are other general scholarships, and the deadline for those is November 1st, so a little sooner. But just to give the heads up on that, in case anyone was wondering. So